This video is brought to you by VolunteerAudio.com, your #1 source for all things Harley-Davidson audio. From individual radios, speakers, and amps to complete plug-and-play amp and speaker systems, we've got you covered. And once you've ordered your package from Volunteer Audio, it includes lifetime tech support. And we have the very best step-by-step installation video so you can install it yourself and save money. All right, so we're ready for our amplifier installation. Our radio part is done. When you get an amp from Volunteer Audio, it's going to be completely plug and play. So what we're going to do is we're going to wire it with all the connectors you need ahead of time. We're also going to perfectly set the amp gains, the filters, all the settings. In this case, you'll see the initials SS. That's for Soundstream, because we're putting in a Soundstream radio. But if you had a factory Harley radio, we do the same thing. So you want to buy the amp from us set up for your radio perfectly. Now, using one of our plug-and-play amps, Robbie's already cleaned our surface. On our Ultras, our Electric Glides, our Street Glides, we're just going to Velcro with this big piece of industrial Velcro, this amplifier right down on this plate. Now this Velcro is extremely strong and you're not going to have to worry about it moving around. It's going to stay there no problem at all. All right, so our amp is mounted. That's pretty easy. Next we're going to route all of our wiring where it goes. It's going to route around up here. We're going to zip tie it in place as we go around, cleaning up our work, plugging in our amp turn-on wire, plugging in our radio harness. I'll let Robbie take over this part. You get to watch him get it all done. Before Robbie routes this wiring, he's going to go ahead and route our power and ground wire, our plug and play one from our battery, up our backbone and into our fairing so we can secure all this together at the same time. All right, so now that Robbie's got our power and ground wire run up the backbone and he's got the backbone cover snapped back on, he's got it plugged in up here at the top of the amp at the top. But I wanted to go over this part first. Robbie's going to take our harness that comes with our Soundstream radio and we're going to plug it into the radio. And the reason this is important, there's a thumb control module here and it needs to be plugged in closest to the radio for your thumb controls to properly work. This is also where our amp turn-on wire is, where Robbie's going to plug in the blue wire from the amp to get our amp turn on. All right, so as you can see, we just routed the wiring up here around the top. We zip tied each one of these wires to the existing wiring harness. Now at this point, we're going to plug in our amp connection, our amp harness, into our radio harness. This is just going to tee in between. Then we're going to take our factory end, we're going to plug it in to the other existing end, the other part that's left over here. Now you'll see a couple connections on this harness that say do not use. They are for an optional DSP that we're not going to be using on this install. So if it says do not use for your install, do not connect those to anything and just kind of ignore them. We'll zip tie those up later. Now, as you see Robbie's doing, he's going to actually take the factory radio end and he's going to put it up next to the storage pocket. He's going to go in there just far enough that it's out of our way, but not so far that our storage compartment lid doesn't open and close. So once you get this in here and you secure it, test that lid and make sure it still opens and closes and that you don't have it in too far. So we're going to take our harnessing, we're going to just kind of pull it across through here, and we're going to find a place to secure it where everything's nice and neat. We're not going to leave all of this just loose. A lot of times that's going to be we're either going to find some factory harnessing and we're going to tidy it, or there's also some loops here in this plastic tray below the radio that a lot of times will also pull some wiring through. So I'm going to start by taking our radio harness over here a little closer. I'm going to come through this plastic tray below the radio. I'm going to pull me a zip tie up through here, just kind of loose. This is our thumb control module harness. So I'm going to pull it over here where it's in here kind of tight like this. Now I'm going to take my excess wiring, the things we're not using. For instance, in this case, we have a backbone connector here that we're not going to use. This would be like if we were going to add a tour pack with speakers to the bike, you could plug in here and run it back. We give that to you so as you do those future upgrades, if you decided to, that you have a place just to plug it in. But in this install, because we're using all factory wiring, we're not going to have to use that. So we're going to take this excess wiring that we have left over and we're going to put it all in this little storage pocket. There's no reason not to. It's a good place to put anything that we have excess, such as this connector for the DSP we're not using. So we're going to get all of these over into this same area, and then we're also going to zip tie this up. So I'm going to zip tie it around that factory or the power and ground wire that's going to our amp. Making sure any of that excess is in there. All right, it's also very important that we take our power and our ground wire and we secure it right with the factory wire here at the neck, because this neck, it does twist on this Streetglide. And so we want to make sure that we've done that, but we also test and we make sure that we have plenty of room both ways. None of our wires getting pulled out of whack. And then we're going to trim that down as well. All right, so now on your amplifier, you're going to have a blue amp turn on wire. It's going to have this little white connector on it. And it's going to plug into the connector here at our Soundstream radio. Now, if you're using the stock radio, you're going to use this factory connector up here at the top. Sometimes there's a block off installed in it, but that's where you're going to plug in your amp turn on wire with the stock radio. When you're using the Soundstream radio, you're going to plug into its harness. All right, so we're going to take our factory USB cable. We're going to plug it in to the back of our radio. It's completely plug and play. I'm going to plug that in so that our Apple CarPlay and Android Auto can be activated through this USB. This is the HDHU 14 Plus, which Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is plugged in. It is not wireless. But at Volunteer Audio, we do offer several options to add a wireless adapter that'll plug in that same pocket that'll let your phone connect to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto without a harness at all, completely wireless. It's going to add the Wi-Fi that's necessary for that to happen. So our fairing is in pretty good shape. It looks good. We have a couple connectors in here again that are not being used. We're just going to tuck those back up in here. That would have went to our original speaker grills. We have our headlight harness here where we can get to it. We still have access to plug in our antenna when we go back with our fairing. So, yeah. So now we're ready. We're going to put the vent in at the top here. You'll see how it fits with our harnessing. Goes right in. Again, back to that T25. Almost everything is either an 11 millimeter, a 13 millimeter, a T25, or a 3/16 Allen head. Covers just about everything on this bike. All right, so we're pretty much ready to put our fairing back on, but before we do that, we're going to get our gas tank back on, we're going to connect the power and ground to the battery, and we're going to do a polarity test of our system. Once we've got all of that done, then we'll put our fairing on last step. All right, so we're obviously just going to unplug all the necessary connectors here on top of our battery tray. We're going to snap our ECM loose here and kind of kick it to the side. All right, so we're just taking everything loose that's up here on top of our battery tray. Then he's going to remove these two 13 millimeter bolts. And then you're going to slide that tray forward, come out from underneath a little metal retainer. That's going to give us access to our battery terminal. All right, so while he's got it out here, we've got a little better image of this. This hole actually wraps around this piece of metal. So it's going to go down and lip under, and then it bolts in place. So after you've unbolted, same thing. Just kind of bring it forward. It's going to come loose from that. And now we've got our terminals. Now this is dirty. A lot of times it is. It's under the seat. It's right above the engine. But we want to make sure we put our positive terminal, the one that has the fuse, on the side that has the big plus, the positive side. Our black ground wire or negative is going to go over here on the other side. We're obviously going to take a screwdriver and get both of those plugged in. This is probably going to have an alarm on it because it's a CVO, so it may start chirping at us. We're going to move our power and ground wires here to the front of the battery. There's actually kind of a cavity there where we'll put that up in front before we put our battery tray back on. This is a waterproof fuse holder. It's oxygen-free copper wire. It's all fully assembled and plug and play when you order your kit from Volunteer Audio. All right, so our battery is connected. We're ready to put our gas tank back on now.